Hey, this is Derek, and if I'm gonna be honest, I really haven't participated in the whole saving the world's economic unrest or working towards fixing all of the financial problems. Because, well, I have my own. And admittedly, we can always justify what we want by manipulating the data in our favor. So that's exactly what I've done for you here today. So, what's my problem? I want a new car. And to the right, you can see a picture of me and the car that I have slash had. That's a senior photo back in high school. So I was maybe 17 years old, and this is back when the car and I both were kind of cool. So those days are long past, and we've not exactly moved on to better things, but just other things. So well, here we are. And there's my list of grievances. I mean, to be honest, it's got terrible fuel economy. The annual operating cost is approximately $3,216 a year. I've got spreadsheets, I've got charts, I've got graphs that kind of list literally everything I can think of. Kind of factoring in as many expenses as possible and just trying to get a really good bite-sized look at how much this car specifically is costing me a year. And starting with the fact that it requires premium gasoline. When you pull up to the gas pump and there's that 93 button normally over there to the right, and it's got like the higher fuel number, and nobody ever wants to push that button. Yeah, my car requires me to push that button. And it's annoying because that gas averages like 273 a gallon out here in Ohio, and I'm only getting 25 miles to the gallon. So, all said and done, it's about $45 a week for me to drive a little over 370 miles. And that gets to me because it's just money going down the drain. Well, in addition to that, I've got wavering confidence in its reliability. It's going to inevitably need some serious mechanical maintenance in the near future. And it's also, as far as insurance is concerned, it's a higher risk vehicle. It's a two-door coupe, so really that's probably enough said. But it's getting older. The safety rating isn't fantastic. The engine size was probably a little much for me when I was 16 when I bought it. Um, and so, yeah, really, the insurance companies don't think that a 16-year-old needed to be driving that. So they jacked up my rates, and they're still higher than I'd really like them to be. And at the end of the day, it's lacking the practicality that I need. It's a front wheel drive sports car, so it's not a real sports car. It's also an automatic, so it's no fun. It's not remotely fuel efficient. It's basically I'm driving a diesel truck here. The back seats are useless, right? They literally just threw those in the back just so they're there. I don't know why they're even there. Nobody can sit there. My 9-year old sister can't even sit in the back. So I don't know what they're there for other than just throwing stuff back there. But well, that's the problem. I'm finding all the issues I can with the car, and so at the end of the day, drum roll, I fixed my problem. I bought a 2016 Ford Fusion Energy. And I didn't spell that wrong. That's how Ford spells it. It's kind of weird. It's energy with an I, not energy with a Y. So, what's the big deal about the car? I mean, it's got everything I want, right? It's got all the features I never knew I was missing. It's got the auto dimming mirrors, the automatic windshield wipers and brights, heated leather seats, lane departure warning and correction, an 8-inch touchscreen, all of it. That's fantastic. So I ended up getting a really good deal on it. The NADA on it's about 16 grand. Kelley Blue Book's 15 grand. The mileage is only at a little under 40,000, and I bought it for 10,500 bucks. I got a really great deal through a buddy of mine who has a car dealer license, and we were just really able to get a great deal. So, long story short, I'm sitting here reevaluating my life because I'm a single 22-year-old and I just bought a hybrid. How cool am I? Well, the best part about all of this is I average 94 miles to the gallon because the engine doesn't even start until I'm over halfway home from work. So maybe that's not as cool as the fact that I only have 144 horsepower. I don't tend to tell people that. That's just kind of depressing. But at the end of the day, it's really fuel efficient. It's saving me a lot of money. It's a more comfortable ride. It's more practical. I can actually put people in it, and I just enjoy the ride. So this is me justifying what I've done, but I really started to think here. Surely I can't be the only one considering a hybrid or an EV. And as I begin to look into it, there's an entire market trend heading towards electric vehicles. And so that's what we're going to talk about today in this presentation is the surge in the EV industry. Specifically, how the emerging electric car market is influencing the current automotive landscape. According to The Economist, hybrids, or EV standing for electric vehicle, now make up a little over 7% of all new car sales, as compared to less than 1% just 4 years ago in 2016. There are more diverse options for hybrids. More car manufacturers are just making hybrid versions of cars that they already have. There's more variation here. There's a decrease in production costs. So all of these things add up to the fact that you can pretty much get an incognito hybrid, right? I've got a Ford Fusion, and not too many people know it's a hybrid up until it's not making noise and the car is moving. So, it doesn't look like a Prius. So you don't get those glares from diesel truck drivers as you pull up at the stop sign. Nobody really knows. It's just kind of a stealthy hybrid. So again, the increased mile range also adds to the convenience here. So, when they first launched these things, you'd have maybe 20 miles of EV range. Now you've got a little over 200 from things or car manufacturers such as Tesla. My car specifically, it still has a gas engine, but it also has a battery pack specifically designated for the car. So I can get like 20 miles per charge straight electric. But then if that fails, I have the actual motor just to kick in and to just kind of take me the rest of the way. And so, Tesla really is the one that changed the markets here. If you kind of look into any kind of graph or chart showing the demographic here, Tesla seemed to have success across a variety of socioeconomic demographics. Both lawyers and school teachers seem to enjoy their product. And really, almost all supercars these days are hybrids because they have instant torque and additional power vectors. It just makes sense to make a car faster, to get it to go faster in the corners. Using hybrid technology is just pretty much the way to go. And again, all of these things add up to the fact that it's a different public perception now. It's no longer the Prius when it came out several years ago. We now have an actual industry dedicated specifically to EVs, and people seem to be embracing it. As the price tends to decline, the desirability factor seems to be going up. And so that really takes us to where manufacturers are at as far as the production and profitability of EVs. Tesla will be making 2 million vehicles by the year 2030 with an estimated 8.3% operating margin over the next decade. And just for reference here, that would put it close to the current output and profitability of both BMW and Daimler, which is the parent company of Mercedes-Benz. That's pretty impressive, honestly. And so you've got two little images or figures down here just to kind of illustrate the point. Because switching to battery-powered motors means short-term pain, but ultimately long-term gain for car makers. Again, many of these companies are actually switching a lot of their platforms. You have most of the European car companies are laying off probably roughly between 3 to 5% of their employees just to make up for the lost time and revenue of the EV market. They're so far behind in innovation. They're really trying to catch up here, and they're ramping up production because everybody is expecting this market to really take off. And finally, you have the falling cost of battery production, which will make the cost of owning and running an EV the same as that of a traditionally powered car. So the internal combustion engines will pretty much be the same price, if not more expensive, as producing an entirely electric car in the near future. And finally, we factor in the government intervention here when it comes to the EV market. Manufacturers are subject to ever changing emissions laws. And so, as the government seems to be requiring better fuel economy for the environment, what have you, manufacturers are really just kind of forced into the corner here. They're having to consider the long-term plan, and it just seems like EVs are the best route for them. So just this month, California passed a bill banning the sale of new combustion engine vehicles by the year of 2035, and it's kind of a bit awkward for the state that is experiencing rolling blackouts because they're switching to new environmental energy sources, and they can't supply enough power. It's kind of awkward for them to be saying that everything has to be electric, but oh well. This is the ultimate Apple removing the headphone jack from its iPhone, right? So from a political perspective, I don't necessarily like it. I generally oppose government intervention in the private sector. However, from an economic standpoint, I can't imagine any greater incentive for manufacturers to increase production of EVs if the sale of new combustion engines will be banned in the largest US state, largest in terms of population, in just under 15 years. Also, charging car batteries from a central power station is more efficient than burning fossil fuels in separate engines. And so, there's a lot of mixed opinions when it comes to this kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, it seems as though if there is a centralized power source, it will be better than various independent power sources. Existing electric cars reduce carbon emissions by 54% compared to petrol-powered ones. So, according to America's National Resource and Defense Council and the World Health Organization, air pollution is the single largest environmental health risk, contributing to 3.7 million deaths a year. Now, as a disclaimer, I think it's important to note two things when it comes to that specific statistic. The wording implies that this is the single greatest environmental risk, right? So it's not the greatest humanitarian risk or extraterrestrial risk, so it doesn't seem like anybody is saying that air pollution is going to kill us all, right? From an environmental standpoint, that's probably the biggest concern going forward is the air quality index. And increased production is really causing that quality to go down. Also, in terms of that specific reference or statistic, air pollution is considered a contributing factor, not necessarily a direct cause of death. So no one is arguing that the death certificate is ever signed as air pollution, right? The cause of death was not necessarily just primarily air pollution. Nobody really considers that, but it does kind of total up to lost years or lost quality of years. And so, they have their ways of figuring out that specific statistic. But just to be clear, I don't think anybody is saying that 3.7 million people die every year exclusively as a result of air pollution. So really at the end of the day, it looks like the 2020s will be the decade of the electric car. And with all good technologies, there comes a time when buying the alternative no longer makes sense. So if you think about smartphones in the past decade, color TVs in the 1970s, or even gasoline cars in the early 20th century, predicting the timing of these shifts is difficult. But when it happens, the whole world changes. And here's just a brief list of the several references that I had I've kind of cited them throughout, but it's kind of an interesting topic. I really, I was kind of a car enthusiast, right? So I went from looking at BMW M4s to buying a hybrid. So, personally, I'm a bit of a conflict here. I love the fact that you can save so much money, but really, it's not what anybody's used to. And I think that's one of the greatest problems here is nobody really knows what to think or what to do with this market. And so, I look forward to looking at your guys' responses, and hopefully we can just kind of. I'd like to hear your opinion, honestly. The fact that I just bought a hybrid really kind of puts me at a self conflict here. Again, this isn't really where I saw myself going here, but I'd love to see what you guys think. And thanks for listening.